Thank God it's Monday. That means it's time for All In, episode number 10. This week you're going to learn about how God can use relationships and serving others to transform lives and cities. Hit it, Elizabeth. You're listening to All In. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you fulfill the mission of God in your life and around the world. I'm your host, Jeff Roper. Today I've got on the Skype line with me my good friend Tim O'Toole. Tim and his wife Christina serve as Foursquare missionaries in Galway, Ireland. Tim, thanks for being with us and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Hey, why don't you take a few minutes and share with our listeners your story. How in the world did you get so lucky or blessed to end up in beautiful Galway, Ireland?
Okay, for me, I knew about 20, 25 years ago, I would be involved with missions somehow outside of the United States. I didn't have any specifics. I just knew that one day that would be happening. My wife has a little different story. She had a little more specific details, but over the years, our stories obviously kind of merged and grew together. For me, I didn't know personally that it was going to be Ireland until 2008 when we made our first trip. It was kind of a scouting trip just to get a sense of what God might be doing and was He really calling us here and where and all of those type things. So we stayed in a cottage that's in the kind of central part of the country so we could travel east and we could travel west and spend time in both areas. As we had prayed and prepared for the trip, we didn't feel to look at any place in the north or even any place on the southern part. So between the west and between the east, we just felt more and more drawn towards Galway, being a university town. It's the third largest city in Ireland. And during that visit, we spent some time in Dublin and just felt that really wasn't where God wanted us. It's a nice city, and it just seemed very international and very large. And we really felt strongly that God's calling for us here had to do specifically with the Irish. And it turns out the west part of the country is really concentrated with the most Irish as far as the language and the culture. But we spent time looking and praying on that trip, and there was one visit we made to Galway, and we had both prayed individually, the prayer, God, we think this is it. We want to make sure this is a big decision. So if you would like us to come to the west, would you just give us a sign, please? Not knowing that the other person had prayed that at the same time, we pulled into a parking lot. It was a rainy, nasty day. We were going to get out and walk the area. And as soon as we got out of the car, we saw a sign that said, "Welcome to O'Toole's." And it was one of those that...
It's a sign.
Yes, literally. And you think, well, that's kind of cheesy, but I think, well, that's kind of God because sometimes He has to talk to me like that. But it was just the final message. Everything we felt in our hearts about the people that were in the West, the culture and the music, the universities, and we actually had already made some contacts that we found out were from the West. So everything just kind of worked together and brought us to Galway.
Okay. And how long ago was that
Wow.
that you actually deployed to move to Galway?
It's been over 3 years. September was 3 years, so
Okay.
we're into our fourth year now.
Okay. And what is it about Galway that you would say, you've already mentioned that it's the most Irish, especially compared to Dublin. Dublin is much more of a cosmopolitan international city.
Right.
And of course you have Cork down in the south, which is, very strongly, but it's probably more international even than Galway is. So Galway being the third city, what is it about that was so attractive to you beyond just the Irish culture that was there? was it that you sensed that that city had something to say to the rest of the nation?
I think that was it. And it's strange because it was one of those things at the time, as it normally is with God, you can't explain it or put a finger on it, but He puts it in your heart and then He unfolds it. But what we've learned, and from reading the history of Ireland and from talking with people who live here, all through the 700 or 800 years of the English occupation, the goal was really to kind of get rid of the Irish and to move them. So they were literally pushed and concentrated into the West. And part of the reason for that was the West has some of the worst landscape for growing food. So the soldiers' thinking was, you know what, if we can't kill the Irish, we'll make them live where they can't survive.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, it's like the language and the culture and all things Irish literally got pushed into the West. And then they had the customs and the sports and the language and the music and things they wanted to retain. So they would have to meet in secret and to carry on those things. So it's just the whole idea of, over all those hundreds of years, things just kind of got pushed and concentrated in the West. And now what God's been speaking is that something is being stirred and awoken and born in the West. And this time it's going to be the West that goes to spread and kind of infect and infiltrate the rest of the country.
Okay.
So for me, that was that was a little bit of the kind of the idea and the behind that.
Okay. Now, when I think of Ireland, I think of one, it's a very strong Catholic background. I think of Guinness beer, and I think of leprechauns.
Mm.
And I would imagine when you were casting the vision for you and Christina and Elijah and Maddie to be missionaries to Ireland, you probably came up against some resistance. People, with those of us that serve in Europe, we often find this, that people say, well, why are you going there? If you're a real
Mm-hmm.
missionary, why don't you go to Africa or South America or somewhere where they really need it?
Right.
Did you find any of that? Did you experience any of that?
We did, to some extent. The big thing that we came against was, well, Ireland doesn't need missionaries, and that's such a beautiful country, and they're so happy, and everything is great, and just the kind of romantic holiday view that everyone has of Ireland. And someone even said, well, Ireland's Catholic. What are you going to do? Convert all the Catholics? And I had to correct them and say, it's not about being Catholic. It's not about being Protestant. It's about being in a relationship with God.
Right.
And that's why we're going to Ireland. That's why anybody should go anywhere to help people grow into that relationship with God. And then as we studied and learned about Ireland, and we spoke with people who lived here, God really blessed us and gave us that deeper view and understanding of what's really beneath the green colors and all the pictures and the music at the pubs. That whatever view people may have of Europeans and of Ireland, there's a hurt, there's a darkness, there's a need, there's all of those things underneath that need God's touch.
Yeah.
And we would just explain, God's been in Ireland for a very long time. The gospel has been there for a very long time. He is having us go there to help uncover that, to help clear the way, to help remove the rubbish, if you will, from the path and from the roads, so that it would be easier for people to enter in that relationship.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good. When you were doing your studies and getting some historical perspective and cultural perspective, are there any particular books that stand out that others might be interested in reading that helped shape the way you were thinking about reaching Ireland?
Well, a lot of them were actually history books about St. Patrick
Mm-hmm.
and about what he did. And really, it was just anything anything to do with Ireland. As far as specifics, I would have to defer listeners to my wife. I give her the credit for being more the brains. She would direct me gently as to what to read. But there's a lot out there, books on the Celtic Christianity and things of that sort.
Right.
But mostly it was, just as much as the spiritual study, also the historical of what Ireland has been through and as a country.
Yeah. Now, I remember reading several years back the book called How the Irish Saved Civilization. Fascinating book, as well as some of the books on the Way of St. Patrick,
Yes.
some of the Celtic Christianity books, which, from my understanding, and maybe this is more of our Protestant approach to it, is not as much a Catholic version of Christianity, but an indigenous Celtic version of Christianity that is very appealing to many of us. You may not, I don't remember if I told you this or not, but both Debbie and I are of Irish descent.
Oh,
And,
yes.
she's a Daly, and my mother was a Malone, actually, I think from near the Galway area. And my sister just recently went through ancestry.com or
Right.
things, and they actually do a DNA test, I guess. They get serious into it. Came out, it shows where your ethnic backgrounds are all from, and
Wow.
60% Irish and a little bit of Northern European. So I guess the result of the conquest or something back
Oh,
there. But
nice.
you
Right.
just you just never know, do you? But
Right.
so Debbie and I both have a love for all things Irish.
Nice.
Now, now that you've been there for these 3 years, going on 4, what have you seen develop? What's happening there now?
Oh, as far as with us
Yeah,
specifically,
yeah, with you specifically.
well, we were encouraged when we first arrived here just to take our time. Obviously, we had a new culture to experience, to learn, to settle our family, to establish our home. And so that was our goal. And that's one of the things that has happened. We've been very blessed as far as how the kids have settled. But we've just found that in that natural act of settling and moving, how easy it was to begin to build relationships and to ask for advice, to ask, for help. Will you teach us this? Will you teach us that? So for these first 3 years, we've been really fortunate in establishing those good relationships. And through that, we've been able to start a Serve the City initiative here in Galway. There was already one in Dublin, so we talked with the directors over there and have gotten one started here in Galway. So now we're active as far as volunteering and recruiting volunteers, and we have a small core that we will literally go into the city and just serve however we can. We've also got a prayer meeting started that we meet once a week in our home.
Okay.
And that's also been very exciting. And these are things that they were ultimately our goal, but just the way they happened, it's been faster than we had imagined, and it's been great.
Okay. Now let's unpack a little bit more for our listeners that may not be familiar with the Serve the City program or concept. Can you unpack that for us a little bit more?
Sure. Actually, Serve the City is a volunteer movement that started in Brussels. We're actually going to celebrate the 10-year anniversary this month. And when it was started, it was just to meet the needs of that city. But as things have happened and taken off, it's now spread into many cities, not just in Europe, but now also in the United States. But the idea, kind of the driving force behind Serve the City, is that in all of our cities, there is always a group of people that are kind of described as on the other side of the line.
Mm-hmm.
One side of the line are those who are doing well, they're well off, they really have everything they need. And the other side of the line are those that are marginalized, those that don't have, those that are oppressed or neglected or abused or whatever the case may be. Kind of the challenge and encouragement with Serve the City is to cross that line in your city. We know these people by their needs. What if we knew them by their names?
Oh, that's great.
So
That's really good.
it's really about getting a group of volunteers together, becoming aware of the needs of the city, and deciding, you know what, a few people doing small things all over the world can make a big difference.
Mm-hmm. So, what are some of the things that you're doing in Serve the City there in Galway, and what are the results that you're seeing?
Well, when we arrived 3 years ago, it was about a half a year after we had been here that we started Serve the City. And at that time, it was just our family, just the four of us. So, in the middle of settling and moving, we right away were aware of, okay, we're here in the city. We want to find out what are the needs that we can help meet. So when we first started, we didn't have any contacts. We didn't have any relationship at that time with civic leaders or other nonprofit leaders. So the first job that we found, the first way to serve, was to pick up rubbish at one of the churches in town. And this church happens to be the oldest medieval church in Ireland that is still in use. It's St. Nicholas. But being in the city center, surrounded by pubs, their church grounds collect all the bottles and cans and rubbish. And we noticed nobody was really picking those up. So we made sure that was not a job that we were going to take from anyone. And then we just started with that one area to begin to clean that. So as we started, it was just very practical, kind of obvious needs in the city, like picking up the litter, and then it moved to graffiti and just kind of helping with the appearance. Through that, God began to open doors, and we had a relationship with someone on the city council who then helped us kind of spread the word about Serve the City, also shared about us with other organizations. So then word just began to slowly spread, and now we get calls from social workers, and they'll say, hey, I have a client who is disabled. They may be in a wheelchair or may have to have a hospital bed put in their sitting room. So they need some serious help in their house. Can you bring a team and come help? So it's those things, just from, a practical need in the city, such as cleaning up, to those that may not be as visible, someone who is old and alone in their home and they can't get around and they need help in their kitchen, they need help in their garden, or they need to paint, or they need someone to talk to.
So where do you get the volunteers?
Well, the volunteers mostly now are from those people that we've built relationship with just as we've moved, and settled and gotten to know people. Some come from the group that meets in our home on Tuesdays. We also do a volunteer fair at one of the local universities. And there's also a great resource in the Galway Volunteer Center where they will connect volunteers looking for projects with project leaders looking for volunteers.
Wow, this is great. Now, I've seen you use this, you and Christina. I've seen the Toffs in Estonia using this, the Valentines, David and Susan Valentine in Budapest using this, and now Travis and Alexis in Krakow, Poland are using this. All as missionaries to go in to a city, and you didn't do the traditional thing like how we used to do church planting in America, which is rent a building,
Right.
put a sign up, and invite people to come to your church.
Right.
You embrace more of that prophetic mandate to seek the welfare of the city, that when it's prospering, you will prosper. And I love how I see what you guys are doing there, of saying, God, don't give this city to us, but rather give us to this city.
Right,
And as
right.
you pour yourself out on behalf of those who suffer, on behalf of those without, God grants his favor, God grants his authority, God opens doors. And so I love to see what you guys are doing there. It's just amazing.
Thank you.
Well, as you've continued to do this and you're starting to see some traction, what do the days ahead look like to you? What do you hope to see happen?
Well, as far as Serve the City, the main thing is we're looking to get a few local folks that will step up and be project leaders and really take the reins on Serve the City. And even from that small group of project leaders, that someone would step into the position of director, that we could just totally hand it over and it would be self-sustained, it would be run locally. Obviously, we would still love to be around to help, but I'd like to see it grow that way and have project leaders stepping up. And it would even be nice to have more projects than we could get volunteers for.
Now, on the mission side of things, on the broadest spectrum, because we're a church planting, church multiplication movement, do you see yourself there planting a church, helping Irish nationals plant the church? How do you see that unfolding in your life and ministry?
Definitely, it would be us helping the the Irish to plant churches. We have no desire, and there's no part of our calling of why we're here to do that ourselves. And, even though you hopefully people read about it and study about it when you move to a new culture and a new country, and it's just become so clear to us here in Ireland that the last thing that is a Yank coming in to try to say, well, this is how we do church.
Yeah.
It just, and you think it would make sense, but still, sometimes that's the attempt here. And we've just seen, and we've heard so much from our friends here that's not going to, that's not going to be of any value. So our goal is definitely to equip and to resource, and even within this first group that's meeting in our home, as we're praying with them and for them, and God's allowing us to literally, through the folks who support us, we're able to provide them with resources, with books, with Bibles, with things to study, with things to pass out to their friends. So that's definitely the goal, is to train and to equip and to walk beside and behind the Irish as they lead and as they plant, as they build, as they grow.
Okay. So you see yourself as that type of catalytic leader that releases leadership in other people.
Yes,
Not the one that goes in and says, like, "Hey, I'm here to save you and fix you," but rather you're there to help them discover how God has already wired them,
correct,
and that the resources for the harvest are already in the harvest.
correct. And that works perfectly here, because that's unfortunately been a lot of the history of Ireland, is someone from the outside, as it is with a lot of countries around the
Mm-hmm.
world, with outsiders coming in saying, we have the right way, you're going to do it or else.
Yeah.
So it's been much more successful the other way.
Yeah, it has. And we see this a lot on the mission field, that sometimes as a missionary you can become, without even intending to, you can become imperialistic.
Mm,
You can bring your culture from your sending nation, bring that and say our job is to duplicate the gospel in this nation, and we're not able at times to separate what is culture from
right,
what is gospel.
right,
Whereas if you go in it the way that you and Christina are doing, by building relationship, serving people, letting the gospel take root in them, when that seed grows up, it looks like an Irish
mm,
Christianity. So
right,
I love that.
right.
Now you guys had a video done recently of your ministry. Where can people watch that at?
That is the easiest place to go. Is we have an Ireland Crossroads Facebook page,
Okay.
and there are links there, or through connecting with us individually on our Facebook pages, and we could make sure the link gets to anyone.
Okay. And we'll include links in the show notes as well. But that's Ireland Crossroads
Yes,
on Facebook. Okay. And so
yes,
that video will be posted there.
yes,
Okay. It's a great video. It's like a 20 or 30-minute video, isn't it?
yes. There's one that's 30 minutes, and then there's a shorter kind of 5 minute preview.
Okay. Okay. Great. So people can watch the 5-minute one. And if they say, hey, I really like this, I want to see the
Oh
rest of
yeah,
it. And it's professionally done. You know, I love what Jim and Lynn did for you guys from Creative Impact Ministries, how they went there. It just, I think what they stayed with you for a week or two, didn't they?
oh almost 3.
3 weeks, and they just followed you around with their video cameras, and they produced this professional
Right.
video. It's outstanding.
Yeah, it was a very, very good time. It was like a reality TV. You've got a crew in your home and they want to listen to your conversations, and that's great because that's how they get a good glimpse of our story and our life, and then they're able to accurately and, like you said, very professionally share that with everyone else.
Yeah. So this was a keeping up with the old tools, huh?
Yes.
Oh, gee, that's terrible. Sorry.
Not quite as dramatic,
Yeah, yeah.
but
No kidding, no kidding. Well, hey, at least you didn't get voted off the island as a result of that show, did you?
that's true.
Yes.
So far, it's only helped us.
Yeah, this is good. This is good. Now, at this stage of your life, seeing what the Lord is using you in, if you could go back in time and have a conversation with your 25-year-old self, what advice would you give that 25-year-old Tim O'Toole?
To leave the country and see more of the world sooner.
Okay.
I honestly would because it's been interesting. Um, it's and it's not bad. I think it's just natural. It happens to people. Sometimes you think where you live is really the center of your world, and however God would choose to do it for different people, I think there comes a time where we all need to realize there's more. There's more going on than just our little corner of the world, and the things that we do that we think are the only way, they're not the only way, and they're not necessarily the right way.
Right.
And sometimes it's difficult to be taken out of that and put in another context and realize, wow, I've got a lot of things that I need to unlearn, or I've got some things I need to relearn.
That's really good because we do get this, especially, you know, we're blessed. Both of us are Americans. We both grew up in the United States. It's a big country, and you can spend your entire life and just never leave the United States and still have a great American experience, but
Right,
you haven't experienced other cultures, and to find out, hey, people do things differently than the way we do.
right,
And it's like you said, it's not that it's better or worse, it's just different.
right.
And we do fall, it's funny, we do fall into this trap as Americans. I see it when I go back to the US. You watch the evening news, and you know, local news is what happens across the street,
Mm.
and global news is what happens. Yeah, I'm from the West Coast, so global news is what happens on the West Coast, and international news is what happens in Miami.
Right,
You know, there's no very little concept of the world outside of us, that people think different, they live different, they act different, they eat differently than we do, they see government differently. And I think that would be great advice to anyone out there, to get out and see the world, not just as a tourist, but go and serve, go on a short-term missions trip, go
right,
somewhere and submerge yourself into different cultures to find out just how amazing this world that God created, how amazing it really is.
right. Absolutely.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the South, in between North Carolina and Virginia.
Oh, okay. And how about Christina?
She grew up in the Northeast,
Uh,
in New York and Connecticut.
you married a Yankee girl.
Oh, she married a Southern.
Oh yeah, tell
That's
me.
what happened.
Well, hey, you know, we both have that experience. I grew up a little bitty town 30 miles south of Birmingham, Alabama. And
Yeah.
then when I married Debbie, she was from California, and of course all my my relatives down south said, "You're marrying a Yankee."
Right.
And that was an interesting experience. You
Oh,
know,
yes.
speaking of Christina being from New York, you know, we were here in Athens one time together doing at a conference, and you know, I'm at our apartment now here in Athens, but back then we were all staying at a hotel, and you guys were there, and some of our missionaries and a lot of our European leaders, and we were just a few blocks from where our apartment is now. And as you know, here in downtown Athens, it's very loud, very,
Yes.
very crazy.
Yes.
You know, it never stops. There's 5 million people that live here, and it's a crazy city. And I was talking to Christina. How, you know, I'd ask her. I saw her the next morning. I said, "Well, how did you sleep?" Because it was so noisy at that hotel that you know but none of us ever got any sleep. It seemed
Right.
like, except for Christina.
Yes.
And I said, "Well, how did you sleep last night? You know, with the traffic?" And she goes, "Oh, it was so loud." I said, "Yeah, I know it's terrible. You just can't sleep." She goes, "No, I slept like a baby.
Yes.
It reminded me of New York where I grew up. It was like the sounds of home." And I
Mhm.
thought, she's a sick woman.
Yeah, to this day, we have to have sounds at night, and often they're sounds of the city to help us
Is
sleep.
is that right?
Right.
Now I have a little white noise program that plays on my computer or my iPad while I sleep because I have to travel so much. It just gives me that constant environment when I'm asleep where it's the same sounds every night. So
Right. Right.
and the sounds I use are waterfalls, rain, a bubbling brook. But she uses car horns and
Yes.
city noises, huh? I never thought of that for helping me sleep. Well, you guys should come visit us here at the apartment. She would sleep like a baby.
Yeah, we'll have to do that.
Well, hey, Tim, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach out and to reach out and connect with you?
The best way is the Ireland Crossroads Facebook page, and also my personal one is just Tim O'Toole on
Okay,
Facebook.
okay,
And then we can help make any connections as far as the video clips or emails or anything like that.
okay, great. Now, as a missionary, you probably have plenty of money, plenty of resources,
No.
but if somebody decided, hey, you know, my heart, I have a real heart for Ireland. Maybe they even have Irish heritage, and they say, you know what, I'd like to be a blessing. I'd like to help partner with you guys. Would they be able to do that if they're so inclined?
Absolutely. And probably the easiest way for that is through the Foursquare website, FMI Give, where they can just scroll through the missionaries and give through that venue there. But that's
Okay.
definitely a possibility.
And we will include that in the show notes as well, the foursquaremissions.org website. And you know, if people want to connect with you guys and partner with you, because I know as missionaries, we're dependent on the generosity of other people for
Absolutely.
us to go into the highways and the byways and teach the good news. Well, one more question
Okay.
before we get going, and this is a very personal one. What are the books or the people that have most shaped your life?
Wow. I would say, first of all, would be a man named Steve Ferguson.
Hmm.
He's a pastor in North Dakota currently, but he's actually the one I met who helped connect me to God. He led me into that relationship and he discipled me. And from the very beginning stages of my walk with God, he was just good to help teach and to guide and to direct me. And over all the years, which has been about 25 or more now, we've maintained contact, and um, it's just been great to have that kind of a relationship of someone who will help get you to the Lord and then disciple you once you're there and help you along the way.
Oh,
And I also have to give a lot of credit to my wife. And just believing that God always brings you who you need, and sometimes we might look at each other and say, you know what, we're so different. And sometimes we look at each other and say we're so alike. But I've found now, especially through these last few years, when you relocate a family and you reestablish a home, and during that time, your family, outside of the Lord, your family is all that you really have with you. And there's a lot of dynamics that happen. But having, for me, such a solid wife, such a supporting wife, and even a wife who teaches and leads me at times and guides me at those times when I need. I think she's definitely been another one of those people for me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we both married up, didn't we?
Yeah, I guess all Yanks aren't that bad.
Yeah, at least we found two very good ones.
Yes.
We found very good ones. Well, Tim, thank you so much for making time in your schedule to be with us today, and I sure do appreciate it. Appreciate your partnership in the gospel and your friendship, and also I love your photos that you're always posting on Facebook. What kind of camera do you use?
You know what? Half of the photos are from my phone.
Okay.
It's hard to take a bad picture in Ireland, so
This be true.
yeah.
This be true. You've got to be a really poor photographer
To mess it up.
Mess it up. Now, are you guys going to do a calendar this year like you did last year?
Yes, we have actually one of our supporters, a good friend in North Carolina, is already collecting photographs that I've sent her, and she's working on that. And that will be kind of advertised and shared on Facebook as well. So if anyone's interested.
Great. We'll have to make sure to keep up with that. We loved the one from last year.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll have to get a couple of them again this year, maybe. Will they be out in time for Christmas to give them away as Christmas gifts?
Yes, that is the plan. Yes.
Okay, super. And what do they cost normally? It was like $20 or something, wasn't it?
Yes, it wasn't. As far as I remember, it was only 20, and our friend who's helping us is very gracious with the proceeds from that, and anything left over is used to support the work here in Ireland. So we're thankful for that.
Very good. Well, hey, blessings to you. And everybody, thanks for listening today. You've heard from Tim O'Toole and Christina serving there in Ireland. And don't forget what some of the key takeaways from this conversation: the power of relationships. We don't go places to fix people. We go places to relate to people. And out of that, Jesus fixes all of us. He brings healing to us. And
right.
Go out and serve your cities. Go out and serve the places and seek the welfare of the city, because when that city is blessed, you'll be blessed. God bless you guys. Well, we're done now. Thanks for listening. This is Jeff Roper reminding you that the mission of God is too grand for mediocrity or average living. You were created for a purpose, and that purpose is found in the mission of God. It's your life. Now go live it.